first of all, Heather, thanks for doing On the Offense again for Renewed, as one of my all-time favorite guests for these meetings. So it's nice to see you again. And I know you've been all over the place, so trying to fit this in is super appreciated. So I'll just start with thanks.
No problem. My favorite group of people.
Yeah. Same here. Yes, the mental health aspects of getting together with the Renewed crowd is not to be underestimated. It's always good to see all of you. And for those who are just signing on, we were joking that Rupert Murdoch is just stepping down, who is Todd's ultimate boss on the call. And other than Rupert, I can't think of anyone who's more influential in the information industry than Heather. So this is perfect. And just timing is ideal. So, the first question is, when are you planning on retiring and passing your business interests on, to your family? So who knows?
Time.
Yeah, good. So the topic today is forward-looking towards 2024, but it's in the context of everything this group has done together in, since COVID, let's say. So very quickly, for context, just to start, as a common basis, and I'll start this discussion with Heather, but anyone on the call is welcome to chime in if you have a different opinion. But certainly in 2021, we all backed down a little bit to reduce risk and try to protect the borders of the company. And then I think most of us took tentative steps, but 2022 was the beginning of a period of recovery, and then 2023 is back to a new normal. Would you describe the curve at Access Intelligence sort of the same way, Heather?
Or so just by way of background, for people who don't know us quite as well, we are a mixed media company, and we're about 70% events and 30% media and subscriptions. So we're more heavily weighted on trade shows and conferences. So our hit in 2020 was probably greater than most of the people on this call. Subscriptions fared a lot better. We are fortunate that we did have a digital media play, because a lot of our event dollars flow into media. So that was very fortunate for us. And so our recovery's also been a little bit skewed. When in 2021, 2022, digital just went through the roof. Subscriptions were extremely strong, stayed very strong. So people, still were holding back on going out. And then events came back with a vengeance. And there was so much pent-up demand for face-to-face. And they also, what we found, became a little bit of a de facto place for people to meet, right? So nobody was really going back in the office. So if you had the kind of product where you were used to, going into the territory and calling on clients, you were going to an empty office, nobody was there. And so conferences and trade shows really became a gathering place where more and more people discovered, hey, this is where my customers are. And it's always been true, but probably even more so kind of in the frenzy of coming out of COVID. I would say this year, digital, definitely the bloom is off the rose. People have shifted money back into face-to-face, but we're also seeing a lot of fear of recession and inflationary pressures this year on both of those. And so where we have had, on the conference side, where you have big teams, people sending 10, 15 people, they're still coming, but maybe they're sending 5. So they're not exiting, but they're being a lot more judicious with their dollars. They're being a little bit more circumspect. We heard a lot of, well, I'm going to wait until the second quarter or the third quarter. Everybody kept waiting for what I'm going to call the recessionary shoe to drop, which didn't. So we've still seen good growth, but I would say it's very much been dependent on market. Some markets have come roaring back. and even their digital advertising has stayed very strong. Other markets are still in much more of a recovery mode. So for
Yeah.
us, we have a lot of internal sampling that we can do, right? Because we're both multimedia and multi-market.
Yeah.
And we see really big differences across that spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah. I, I think to some degree, I think a lot of people in our small group kind of look to Access Intelligence because you do have the multimedia and your event centric, let's say. So obviously you took the initial hit much harder than many of us did. In fact, as Lisa, who's at BVR with me, knows, the effect of, the macro effects of the COVID years on BVR was essentially that we flatlined
Yeah.
because we got through 2020 better than we thought, but we only had one event, so we didn't have huge exposure to that. But what I think is interesting in your answer is, of course, we're all living in the media world where everybody's saying, okay, events are back, we're in recovery, this is the new normal. But I think, Heather, your description shows the nuances of that. And you could take from your comment that you might be facing 2024 with a bit of anxiety and uncertainty, having what you just described. Is that?
I think definite uncertainty for sure, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the great things about events is the forward bookings. It's kind of your renewal business. So, you have one event and you're rebooking your sponsors for the next one. And so all of that's looking really good. People still want to be in the market. I think the attendee is a little bit less clear, and I haven't spoken quite as definitively on the subscription side, but I would say our subscriptions have stayed really solid. And again, we're in multiple markets and we have different price points for different subscriptions. But I think on the subscription side, we're really digging in to look at all of our offerings. I think during COVID, we were trying to juice some things, and we added some what I would say value add to try to get more subscriptions. But we've done a lot of digging in to look at, are people really buying what we've added? Do they see it as value, or is it just fluff and confusion, and are creating content that we thought the community wanted that isn't resonating? So we're really doing a lot of analyzing of, well, what are people really engaging with, and then doing a lot more surveying of our communities to really try to understand what is it that they want that might be additive. Certainly that additive value, when you can hit the nail on the head, is super helpful for your site licenses, for your big sales.
Boy, there's a lot there. I suspect what you just said resonates with everybody on the call, and we're obviously doing the same thing. Maybe I could start at about 10 places, but what intrigues me the most about what you said is looking at the adjustments you made in the past and realizing, some of the content didn't quite score the way you wanted it to, and it sounds like some of the go-to-market strategies, as we've adjusted, now's a good time to rethink. Is there anything that sort of comes to the top of mind there on that, again, just out of common experience that we all have?
Something that's really resonated with me. I was at an industry event, and they had futurists speak, and I always find them interesting. But one of the things that he was really talking about is the difference, or one of the comments he made that resonated with me was the difference between being a product-centric organization and a customer-centric organization. And as much as I think we all like to think that we're a customer-centric organization, when you sit down and you talk to your people, all they talk about is their product. Your salespeople, all they have to talk about is what they have to sell. They don't really think about what the customer need is. And
Yeah,
we've done a good job deploying NPS over the last several years and using the feedback and customer comments that are coming back from our NPS scores. And I
yeah,
mean, we really go through this with a fine tooth comb. We look at all those comments to really try to inform. But we still, I think, have a long way to go. And obviously, in an organization of our size, some people do it better than others.
yeah,
But
yeah,
salespeople, they're used to going in and saying, well, here's my deck. Here's what I have to sell you. What do you want to buy? Instead of saying, hey, what is the problem you're trying to solve for? And
yeah,
let me tell you if I can help you solve your problem.
yeah,
Ultimately, though, it's and that customer centric can go too far, right? So we're not consultants either, unless you're running a consultant practice. You've got to be careful. The other thing that he talked about that really again resonated with me is all customers are not created equal, and so you really have to be able to understand and decide who you're going to spend your time with and invest more in the people that are going to bring you long-term value. And
yeah,
that's, whether that's a subscriber, whether that's an advertiser, whether that's a sponsor, but really looking at your customer base and who you want to have, who's been with you a long time, and really trying to find then lookalikes for those that are similar to those people that you've had for a long time, and spend
yeah,
more time trying to get those people than just people that, as I call them, come through the sieve, right? They come in the top of the funnel, they buy once and they fall right out of the bottom.
yeah,
And so you've got the hit of the one-time sale, but you don't have the long-term benefit of the lasting relationship. So I think for us, when I start thinking about themes that we're looking
yeah,
into, that we're really studying for next year, I think it's really focusing in to become even more of a customer-centric organization, practicing what we preach, listening to our customers, really trying to understand what they want and letting that direct our product development. And as opposed to, well, I've got a good idea. And then, I think we're all guilty of it. At least we are inside. Somebody's got a great idea. It sounds great. We launch something because it's hot. It gets a little hit for a while, but
yeah,
12 months, 18 months, 24 months, it's kind of dwindled because it
yeah,
was a hot topic, but we didn't really listen to the market. The market wasn't really going in that direction. And our
yeah,
customers needed something briefly, but they didn't need it over the long term. And there's nothing
yeah,
wrong with taking quick money out of the market. You just have to understand that's a quick hit. And so maybe you only want to invest in it in a certain way or to a certain degree.
yeah. I think a lot, I mean, something behind what you're saying that I think is a crucial point, and again, I don't know how much everybody on the call identifies with what Heather just said, but you were essentially word for word at our strategy discussions at BVR. So you could have just wafted into the conversation and nobody would have noticed that you were there, because that kind of thing. But one underlying assumption I think I hear in your comment, again, we're certainly in the same situation, is this is driving us to increase sophistication in the way we look at our core market, and realizing that's where the value add is, and as a corollary to that, it's less likely that the value add is going to be moving into a new market or taking a new risk with some peripheral subset of one of your markets. I mean, we're trying to do that, but and now I look at those opportunities and I just think they're small compared to average account value kind of thinking, or around different customer segments. Are you feeling that same way? I mean, I'm not rejecting new markets, but I'm very suspicious about those efforts, and we all are at BVR.
Yeah, I think, for us, we absolutely, if you're, I mean, we are more of an organic growth company at the moment versus acquisition. We'll probably start acquiring again in 24, but we have not been acquisitive as we've come through the pandemic. We've really kind of stuck to our knitting. And so we
Yeah,
do look at those opportunities, particularly those opportunities. Again, we're in multi markets. And so if you're only sitting in your vertical, if you're running a vertical, you tend to look at what's within your vertical. And so the expansion opportunity is somewhat limited. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, sometimes you can pick up a really nice seam of business and it's a long-term seam, but I think scaling opportunity is so important. And so for us, I think the bigger opportunities are where you have multiple verticals. Are there opportunities that sit between two verticals where you can bring the strength of those two verticals together to work together to find some white space? So again, it takes some time, but I think market mapping. And again, this is where spending time with your customers, understanding what your customers' needs are, and sometimes asking the questions that are outside of your product. You know, well, what other needs are there that maybe nobody is filling? And I think those are really the critical things. Is, I mean, we always talk about the importance of the customer and listening to the customer, but it's harder to do when everybody's busy with their day job. You know, they don't stop and take the time to do it necessarily. And so we are trying to create more discipline around our data, analyzing our data, sharing that data around creating best practices, and really best practice data around listening to our customers.
Yeah. I mentioned if anyone on the call has thoughts parallel or different from what Heather's saying, feel free to throw them in the chat. As you know, we usually integrate those pretty well. Access Intelligence is one of the first renewed members to aggressively start following Net Promoter Score, NPS, that you mentioned. So I think you guys in our world have been sort of ahead of the curve there. That's certainly one indicator, and it's particularly important in the event space. I know we've actually done some consulting projects which have gone back to including focus groups, but also segmenting. You know, because we're being more careful about the analytics, we built some new tools to look at ideal customer behavior, what we call the poster customers, who, you know, have the best buying pattern and why the other customers don't match that kind of thing. Looking at the top, 50 customers, how do we move them even farther up. And the final thing, we haven't really resolved this, but for us, when you get into the bottom quartile of all of our customer base, they tend to be one-shot purchases, non-renewing. So I think, the result is we're starting to build strategies to not even allow those entry points anymore, because they require such an infrastructure and they're not really feeding into a recurrent revenue. And any thoughts, because you're doing that on a much bigger scale than we are and in multiple markets, any thoughts around that kind of exercise?
I think kind of that bottom quartile for me, and it depends again on the size of your organization. Certainly if it's driving your infrastructure and it's creating more cost, that's a different story. But if you've got your infrastructure built out, I think the key is not to spend time trying to acquire those people, but if they're finding you and you're not, I think that's the key for me. Is I would not want to be trying to spend a lot of time, effort, energy, or dollars to invest in trying to find those folks. But if they're finding us and they're trying us out, I'll take all the dollars that come in. I am an equal opportunity capitalist. So anybody that wants to give us a try, I'm perfectly happy with that. The other thing is we are doing a lot of audience development work to follow people when they leave, when they change jobs. And that's been really critical during the pandemic. Some of our markets have been very stable, but other markets there's been total upheaval. And so people, even though they haven't left the industry, they've really job hopped. And so, I think that's the other thing that we're really pretty focused on. Is trying to look at that as well.
just on the event side, and I know this is gonna be different in whether it's satellites or, you know, which of your markets we're talking about, but are you, you talked about sort of, you know, customer and market mapping. And I know we're all changing from product management to account management, KPIs and that sort of thing. But do you, because there are a lot of people here who do events, are you sort of product mapping the big events? Like, is there anything you're trying to get out there so your salespeople can say, you know, newer, better in 2024 kind of thinking? It's really hard to do with events, so I'm not trying to put you on the spot there, but
Yeah, no, I would say that again, the big focus that we've had on most of our events has been creating more experiences. And that does not necessarily mean flashy experiences. We're not consumer, right? We're not trying to
yeah,
create consumer experiences. But a good example for this group, we have some publisher forums that are about 150 attendees with sponsors tied to that. And we have some LDC forums that are a couple hundred attendees. And
yeah,
those are very much, you know, kind of a buyer seller dynamic. And I would say, you know, but what works for both of those, and those are events that are going to run between 500 and $750,000 on
yeah,
average.
yeah, yeah,
And but what really works with those is each of them, they have a lot of networking time. They have, but beyond even receptions, like you can sign up to do a networking event. It might be a wine tasting. It might be going to do a local historical tour, but it's offsite. You know, you're outside, and you're with people, and they're very this is what people want these days. You know, they really want to connect. And
yeah,
listen, if I just came back from our OR event in Nashville, and that is with nurses, and they're all about the CEs, right? So they're far less about the networking, and they want their continuing education credits. So
yeah,
again, all events are not the same. But I
yeah,
think, you know, if you have that kind of event, they're easier to put on. They're hotel events. They're very tight communities, and these are people that do come back every year. It reminds me of a renewed event. These are people that know each other, that hug each other when they see each other. We haven't seen
yeah,
you since,
yeah,
you know, this one or that one. And
yeah,
so I think experience is huge. People do
yeah,
want more opportunity to network. The trend
yeah,
in events is shorter
yeah,
days. People don't want to be away from home as long. They don't find the necessity for it. Any content that they can get on a webinar, they want on a webinar. They do not, you know, if you're going to sell me a ticket and you're also going to include this online content, that's fine. But they
yeah,
really want to optimize the time that they're there to network and be with
yeah,
folks. Um,
yeah. I'm
you
I'm
know, they
noticing.
don't just want to hear either from the speaker, from the stage. I mean, keynotes are fine, but they also want to be, you know, whether it's roundtables or small group settings, we're really seeing that kind of come to the forefront. The other
Yeah,
thing that's big in events that a lot of discussion has started to happen around is this concept of the next generation event goer. So event goers post pandemic, like the average age of an event attendee is dropping rapidly. It used to be 55 and now it's in the mid 40s. And that's a pre post pandemic number. And a lot of
yeah,
that is just, you know, more people, older people retired early, opted out early. Um, and so this is what's driving the event experience is, you know, younger people want a different experience than older people. They want to do more networking. They want, so it's an interesting thing because, you know, again, 40, let's say 45 to 50 is still not 25, right? So,
yeah,
but what is that difference and how quickly is that going to continue
yeah,
to shift? How quickly is that age dropping? So I think there's a lot to be learned. I would say, you know, be tuned
yeah,
into that. Really look at, in B2B events, we're not collecting age data of our attendees, but we really do take a hard look and try to understand
Who they are.
the age of our
Yeah.
attendees, people that are coming, people in the industry. And you can't really tell by title anymore either. The titles are changing, they're getting different, and you're seeing younger and younger people with higher titles as
Yeah.
people age out.
Well, I think your product champions I mean, even on the subscription side too, it's getting more difficult to identify who your champion is, and it might be 3 people in different departments who have different interests, so that everybody's commenting on, the enterprise license or the big media sponsorship. The sales cycle has become, twice as long. Could I want to jump back because Todd, you've got a lot of experience here, and you just on the listening to the customer thing, we're at BVR, we're doing a bunch of different things. I would say the general trend is exactly what Heather said, that even though we're smaller companies, we need to approach voice of the customer with the same sophistication of the huge guys, like Opus being one of the larger ones. So Todd, do you want to just jump in on your thoughts on that or questions?
Yeah, I just a perennial issue through my career, of course, want to listen to customers and hear what they have to say, but actually making it happen is harder than you would hope, for a couple of reasons. And just wanted to get your thoughts on how you approach this, Heather. I think one challenge is maybe internal and one's external. The internal one is, how do you encourage that or mandate it with your people? I mean, do you have metrics where you talk about you have to talk to this many customers or something? It's kind of a matter of fitting it in your day when everyone's like, oh, I know I should talk to customers, I know, but there's no like deliverable for it. So kind of how do you, for yourself and for people you work with, how do you encourage that?
Yes, it's a very timely question. We did an internal process this summer where we went out and looked at the biggest spenders in every market by brand and whether they were spending with us or not. We just wanted to look at who are the top spenders. And then we targeted those in, and the goal was to have a conversation with the top 20 spenders in every market to better understand what are they buying, what are their needs, not just buying from us, but in general, what are their goals, and to get not just have it be a sales call, have it be a brand lead or somebody else involved in those calls, so that we could get the right level of data back. And listen, I'll be honest, like some have done it better than others. Some, and I think I saw Matt Grant on this call. I mean, if I ask Matt Grant, he knows what every customer is doing. He's very deeply in tune with what his customers are doing. He's gone with his salespeople. He's met with his customers. That group in particular, they're very good listeners. But I have a lot of them that the brand leader hasn't done it, and the salesperson is, oh, well, I called them and they haven't called me back. So I am like a broken record. You just have to keep asking and pushing. It's a horrible job to have, but some people will take to it and see the value in it, and others, you will have to kind of drive them to it.
Yeah, we actually hired a consultant, somebody with background in Informa, which most of you know is a huge events producing company based in the UK, but pretty global. So it was a double opportunity to get an objective listener, but also for all of us to see how a very sophisticated voice of the customer operation would be run. So I ended up learning a lot from it. Todd, what are you trying to do in that area?
Well, I think my general problem, apart from systems to fit it in both for myself and people I work with, is when you reach out to people and to try and get feedback, you would hope that they'd all raise their hand and say, yes, I want to give you a ton of feedback. Let me spend 2 hours with you. But it never goes like that. And people never get back to you. And it's just so hard to get someone on the phone, on a call, whatever.
So I do
And
have
I
an
think it's
idea
just,
for that, Todd.
sure.
One of
Yeah.
the things that we've done is we've tried to create a piece of content that is a forward-looking industry piece of content, and saying to the people when we're to get the meeting, we've done some industry research, some benchmarking that we want to share about how the customers are viewing different things, different vendors. And they, trust me, everybody wants to know where they stack up with other people. It is the easiest, fastest way to get somebody to take a meeting with you. And the other benefit to that is it gets them talking about the industry and the findings, instead of getting stuck around, well, give me feedback on my product. They're really talking about their pain points. It comes out. But if you can create a piece of content that really will help, and if you can do some kind of benchmarking, use your editorial team to create some kind of benchmarking survey and ask your customer base what they're looking for, what is some of the intent to buy, who do they perceive as market leaders and why. Like, this is an opportunity, if somebody's not perceived as a market leader, for you to say, hey, this is how you're being perceived in the market, but we can help you change that perception. But if you have that benchmarking data, people absolutely are more inclined to take the meeting.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's do the as always, Heather, with you, there's so many different directions to go, but one of the things that's come out of our increased voice of the customer research this year is what I call sort of user interface. So of course, this seems like a broken record too after the many years, but of course, one of the things that comes out of it is, okay, we need new technology, we need new, better user analytics, kind of on the digital side of our product mix. So there's a point where you could kind of be cynical and say, no matter what we do, it ends up ending in more tech investment. I made a note of that here. First of all, I think that's probably never going to end, sadly. But in your plans, Heather, going forward, do you see more expenses necessary to achieve the revenue goals, or what's happening on the cost side of trying to be a profitable event provider?
Yeah, so certainly on the event side, events are becoming more expensive, right? So F&B is up. I mean, this is an inflationary problem. F&B is up. Venues have taken their prices up. So, we definitely are increasing our prices related to that. Event technology is, listen, you have to pick and choose. We have just, again, we have a more of a challenge. Because we did so many acquisitions, and when you build through acquisitions and you bring all these bolt-on pieces, everybody has their legacy system that they're hanging on to, right? So everybody wants, well, I want my mobile app is better than this mobile app, and my registration system's better than this registration system. So we've been doing a lot of work to get buy-in, to streamline down to, now we have, big, we have 15,000 people at a trade show. And like I said, we have 150 people at a conference. So those are two different registration platforms that we use, but we are down to two. We are down to, trying to get down to one mobile app or two mobile apps based upon, the needs of the events, but we are driving to declutter. And I think, again, one of the things, there's so many, new sexy bells and whistles, and, it's easy to get sucked into some of these things. And I need this and I need that. So I think, the what we've paid for tech continues to go up. And I would say we are making a real concerted effort to wrap our arms around that. We've done a lot more group buying, corporate buying, So, I mean, we've done a lot to be able to squeeze costs out of our contracts that are not customer facing, right? So these are things the customers don't see. They don't care if we're paying, you know, a dollar per registrant or $5 per registrant, right? So for us, we've really tried to squeeze that out. And the next step will be going into the groups and finding those little pet things that, oh, I prefer to be on Zoom instead of the company life size platform. You know, all of those little dollars, trying to get those out of the business so that we can invest in those areas that make more sense.
Yeah, we're doing you know, similar things like what I would call product mapping, even though we're changing and simplifying the go-to-market strategy. The product mapping being designed as a way to support significant price increases. You know, I think in 2024 our overall goal is 10%, and now we're trying to figure out how to add value to make that an easy push for our sales department. So very common. Could I just, we haven't talked too much about market development, and Mickey's asked about that. Do you want to jump in, or
Yeah, happy to. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, Mickey, I think if I understand your question, it's on how do you develop audience for a brand new conference. And I think, you know, one of the things that we would do is, you know, we would start, I mean, I'm assuming your conference builds off your newsletter, but we would absolutely use the newsletter. We've had really good success with LinkedIn groups, building LinkedIn groups, and utilizing those. We've done some LinkedIn lives. I don't know if you've tested those, but I mean, again, that's a great way to get people engaged with your group and your content. And we like to do a webinar. We like to, you know, a free webinar. Let's float it out there, or maybe, you know, a low price webinar if you're trying to figure out what price people will pay. But all of those kinds of people that will go to a LinkedIn live or show up for a webinar, they're going to be much more likely to attend a conference. The other is the tried and true is, you know, if you can find somebody who's willing to, you know, do a list share, you know, that's always a good thing. I'm not a huge fan. I think rented lists have not been, the quality's just not great. But I think if there's, you know, white papers are another way. You know, if you want to do a white paper, if you're launching a conference on a specific topic, put a white paper out on a specific topic. Again, if you can start with free content and at least get the engagement, then you've kind of at least got the name that you can try to ascertain if they would be a good conference attendee.
Yeah. Any other thoughts from the group on market development? We're sort of realizing, you know, we pretty much maximized our market, but we're trying to you know, much more consciously white space, you know, whether it's adding in sort of product groups that large customers don't have, or still trying to find people who are, you know, way underrepresented in what they're spending with us at this point. So yeah, very common. Think any other comments on that one, because that's
I will make another quick comment. So it's not something that we have done historically, but Jay Weintraub, who we've acquired businesses from and has launched and sold other events, he really does a phenomenal job with the partnership model. So the event we acquired from him, it was his background. It's the core of what he came out of. So it was much more typical. And when he went on to launch events in new markets, he got a partner who was an expert in that market and brought along their own contacts and databases. And I mean, he's had phenomenal success. So partnerships come with their own level of challenge. But if you can find the right partner, if you have certain audience and skill set, they have certain audience and skill set, and those things are complementary and not competitive, there might be an opportunity. And a lot of times these folks are consultants. They're not event producers. So there, there can be a good opportunity to partner. So like I said, I follow Jay very closely because I'm in awe of what he's accomplished. But we have not had quite that level of appetite for it. Finding the right partner is key.
Yeah,
And structuring the right deal can be difficult. So I think
yeah,
those are all the things you have to look at. So I'm not saying that it's for the faint of heart, but look up Jay Weintraub and some of the businesses that he's created, and it would just be another great model for you to kind of take a look at.
think about. Could you just, very quickly, but perfect partnership model from your point of view, what would those terms look like? Because that's the single best way I know to reduce the risk of trying to go into a new market or a new delivery platform, but it's not for the faint of heart. Like what would a good deal
I think
look
it
like?
depends on what each of you are bringing. So typically,
Yeah.
if we were going to partner with somebody, we would bring the infrastructure, and that would have a little bit more of a benefit. So we would look for something more, obviously more than a 50-50 partnership, because we would bring all the back end infrastructure and the billing and all of that. And then I think it's just a question of really getting aligned on, is this a long-term hold? Are you going to hold it until you hit certain financial metrics? I think
Yeah.
that clarity on exit strategy is as important as anything else. If you've got a partner that wants to exit before you do, what is your right to buy them out at a do you get to buy them out at a preferable multiple because you're partners? So I think those are the kinds of things that we would look at in terms of structuring a partnership deal. How much money, we would not necessarily take any money out of the business. We would roll it forward. But does the partner need the money? Are they looking for a salary? How much money would they want to pull out of the business? And how would you account for that? So I think those are some of the, the high level. But I always say that, very frequently, if both parties are motivated, there's always a deal to be done. I always say that the same with an acquisition. Every acquisition I've done is different. It's all based on the needs of the seller. Some people are looking for a retirement plan. Some people want to stay invested in the business and use our infrastructure and our expertise to grow. So they take some forward interest in the business. So, it just depends on where people are in their current situation and what's motivating them to sell. So, I mean, that's the good thing, is we have a lot of flexibility to structure deals, that meet the needs of the seller.
Yeah. I think, all those things make total sense. And I think on market development, I'm always influenced in partnerships by whether or not there's actually any evidence that the partner can sell. So if you've got a partner that can be help you develop the market, that's worth even more. Like I'm I don't need to profit on your sales as long as I get access to the market almost. I mean, it's great if I can profit on your sales, but they're, those negotiations can be tough. We've done events where, people will say, okay, I'll take 20% of whatever we sell because you have all the expenses. I try not to go worse than 50-50. I'm sure you're in the same boat, Heather, but working those things out. So this is as everyone knows, this is a 45-minute chance to dive deep into strategy, which, Heather, you mentioned like 150 strategy things. And also one KPI that I hadn't thought of that you might want to add to your dashboard, which is hugs per attendee, as an indication of event quality, because you see people seeing each other for the first time and the energy, is palpable. And as an event producer, you you know you're succeeding when you're seeing a lot of that. But could I might end with sort of one of the, I guess you could say one of the softer topics, but just, you know, after what we've been through, mental health, you know, yours, Heather, and senior management, people are a little banged up after what we've been through. How are you feeling generally about that in 2024?
I think it's an interesting question. And, there's been so much written about, and I'm going to tie a little bit of mental health into the work from home discussion. Because I do, we've heard so much about how anxiety has increased, not just for older people post-pandemic, but for younger people. And I do think I saw a great quote or term used, and I think it might have been, I can't remember where it was, but it's this thought of return to culture, as opposed to saying return to the office. It's returning to being together, and I think that is really good for our mental health. We have not enforced a return to the office, although we are encouraging everybody who is contingent, commutable to an office, to come in 1 day a week. And we've encouraged our managers, have your team come in all on the same day. And then what we found is all of our teams are kind of coming in at the same time. So you get the benefit of, because there's no benefit if I come into the office on Monday and you come into the office on Thursday, then we're just two lonely people sitting in an office alone, really trying to make sure that we're bringing people together. So I do think the mental health aspects of work from home, I think, are real. I think the isolation that you have, the feeling of, we see it pop up now and again in our employee surveys, is, we don't really know the people I work with, or my boss doesn't really understand what I'm doing, or I'm not sure what my next career move is. And I think if you're in the office, if you're contingent and around more people, that's not quite as big a deal. Now, maybe that's more applicable to us because we're a larger organization. But I do think the mental health struggles are real. I think for a lot of women, moms in particular, the ability to work from home, if not 100% of the time, a lot of the time, has created a huge reduction in stress. That thought of, I'm gonna have to fight traffic to pick up my kid from daycare, if that's their 1 day a week instead of 5 days a week. So I think there's a lot we can do around mental health and the stress of that. But I mean, I'm always one too that I find business energizing. I mean, it's stressful, but it's, the good work is the fun work. It doesn't mean it's easy, but if you can find a way to be in front of your customers, if you can be at an event and be talking to people in real life and understand their challenges and their frustrations. I mean, this is what we're in business to do, is help solve those problems. So for me, even when it's stressful, I don't know, I'm pretty type A though. I find it to be pretty energizing. I did not find it to be energizing when we were canceling and rescheduling our events every 3 months during the pandemic. So I don't want to misrepresent, but this kind of back to work, and listen, there's market stress. As I said, we're fortunate that we're in several different markets. This year, I wish I was only in the travel market, which is going like off the hinges, great, fantastic. And we are not in that market, but listen, it's my time will come around again. And we've got a good mix. And so, I don't know, but I think isolation is a real thing. I think to look at your employees, again, a lot of the things that we're trying to do, we've launched these centers of excellence internally. So they're functional centers centered around sales and marketing, customer experience, audience and content. And we've specifically gotten different, and they're more executive level brand leaders, but gotten different people from different groups. So again, there's more collaboration, even though they're not together. I think trying to find, we have to over communicate and find ways to create collaboration points Because I think the isolation is a big thing. I think a lot of that mental health is ties into loneliness
Yeah.
more than stress. We've always been stressed, but now we're
Yes.
lonely, stressed. And
Yeah.
so I tie a lot of that to the loneliness.
I do too. I mean, we're sort of out of time. Mickey's got another question about digital events. Maybe
I don't mind staying on. I have a few minutes if anybody wants to stay on. And Sue had a question too about attendee flows, but I'll just go ahead and answer the questions on Mickey's question.
Yeah.
On digital. I think for us, what we found, Mickey, is digital works really well for education and what I would call entry-level attendance. So for people that might not have travel budget, or people that are like the hardcore doers in an organization, they're like, I don't have time, even if, you know, an event is close to me and it's just one day, I would much rather log on to get that information than go to an event, and it's more accessible to me. So I would say, if you were going to do a digital event, what we found is our digital events are really good to educate, to problem solve. You know, for those folks that might not have that travel budget, they actually prefer it. And definitely, you know, we are seeing a generational issue with younger people don't understand why everything can't be digital. So, I mean, I definitely, which again, trends toward, you know, more of I don't even mean entry level, but, you know, more of that, you know, I'm really time crunched and I'm doing all the work, that kind of worker swath.
Seeing that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good answer.
Yeah.
Well,
And,
listen,
yeah.
one more thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
There are, we again continue on many different lines there. I hope, Mickey, I think that's, you know, that's a good starting point, is who's the audience, and I think you can do product development around that. You know, within any topic, you could say, okay, I've got a segment that's sort of mid-career people, you know, so there is some upside potential, I think, in that kind of market analysis, you know, and then different delivery mechanisms. So
I'll also add, and I don't know if it's helpful, but we found too, digital conferences really work if there's a new tool or technology or trend. Like the more topical things really tend to, you know, all of a sudden it's like, well, AI is a perfect example, right? You know, well, how is AI being used by your community? And everybody's like, well, I don't want to get behind. So is my community using it? How are they using it? Am I using it to its full advantage? So I think, you know, any kind of trends or technologies that are coming to the forefront, I think those are perfect topics for digital. The other thing is, if you're getting that swath of, you know, I would call it, you know, low to mid career folks, then that's the perfect ground too for you to cultivate them up into a live event, right? As their career goes, bring them in, engage them, get them engaged, and then hopefully you're upscaling them to a live event in the future. But we have found, you know, senior executives just don't participate in digital for the most part.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll keep to everyone on the call, check in on your own mental health. You know, we're lucky enough to work in a business that I've found intellectually and emotionally challenging for 35 or whatever years now. I don't even know how long it's been. And I still feel the same way, but you know, just at a personal level, I've had a lot of discussions with renewed people about depression, loneliness, you know, I think it's definitely been a tough couple of years when you're trying to lead an organization, you know, from your dining room or wherever you are. So I'll sign off with that again. Just, Heather, you're always such a joy, and your energy is palpable, and every minute I spend with you helps me. So I'll just say thanks again for doing this and for all the conversations over the years, and I look forward to the next one, hopefully in person. So
absolutely, me too.
Yeah, and that was great. I really appreciate it. Sue, thanks for the help setting this up and try to catch up. We're gonna do another on the offense in October on kind of marketing and market development. So Mickey, your questions, there might be some good things next month, and Renewed's got a bunch of other programming coming up, which I won't repeat because we're a little over, but keep an eye on the calendar. So thank you very much to all of you. We'll see you down the road, and good luck for the rest of the year in 2024.